AMC theaters offer a pretty simple proposition. Pay $25 a month, you can see 3 movies in any format at any theater in the country.
Take your place among the stars on our A-list.
This service is meant to combat the crowd of people who are like, I would be a real movie theater goer if tickets were cheaper, because seeing 2 movies a month effectively pays for the membership, and anything after that is hypothetical extra money in your pocket. Now, you may already be wondering,
how can that be profitable for
American multi-cinema?
And my guess is that it's not, especially if you never buy concessions, which this pass is desperately trying to get you to do. Remove that from their arsenal, and their only hope to win this is to bank on your sheer laziness. They really don't think you have it in you to leave your house 2 more times a month, and they're willing to bet an entire chunk of their business on it.
Honestly, great call by the haters. I started paying for this thing in June, and I've only seen 5 movies between then and October. I paid $100.79 for a group of movies that would have cost me $58.35 out of pocket. Some might call that a horrible trade deal.
While I may be in the red now, that doesn't mean I gotta be there forever. Many a time over the past 28 years have I heard about this great potential I have to do something with my life, and now I finally understand that that means nominally affecting this theater chain's balance sheet. For 1 month, I will be trekking from my comfortable home into the cold depths of the famed red recliners to see every possible movie that is promised to me. Maybe, if I really believe, I could bankrupt AMC MoviePass style by simply using the product the way that it is intended. With some simple mental math, I'm pretty certain I can undo 5 months of poor attendance by seeing 12 movies in 31 days, but the bigger question is it worth it? I'm already subscribed to Netflix, HBO Go, HBO Max, Hulu, Prime, Canopy, Peacock, Paramount Plus? So A-list, in one regard, is just an early access pass that requires me to pay gas and parking. Sure, I get a bigger screen and better sound than I would at home, but the price to quality ratio isn't exactly that favorable. For instance, the 2 theaters that are within 10 minutes of my house don't even offer laser projection, and most of the time they're slightly out of focus. That's basically the same setup that I have at home, except my couch is significantly comfier, and at least I know why it's sticky. On one hand, I am willing to drive further to see something in a more premium format, like IMAX or Dolby, which easily pays for itself with this membership. However, if the movie itself is disappointing, it feels like a much bigger waste of time than if I just suffered through it in my apartment. Since this symbiotic relationship between movie and theater experience is the foundation of the subscription, I've designed a list to decide if A-list is efficacious. If I check off at least 2 of these, then for that movie, I'm glad that I went. Now, a lot of people say that batting 300 gets you into the Hall of Fame, but what they don't realize is there are some stinkers in Cooperstown. I'm aiming for Roy Schalk numbers here, alright? As long as 3 of these movies pass the test, I'm saying it's worth it. With that, it's time for movies, now more than ever. Little editor's note. So I originally ran this experiment in October of last year, but got a little busy, but seeing as cinema is forever, as they say, and a lot of these have made it to your favorite slop factory at this point, so you may have actually seen them, we're gonna grip it and ship it anyways. The AMC week starts on a Friday and ends on a Thursday, which I unfortunately did not get to take advantage of because I was out of town. October started on a Tuesday, so I actually could have saw 15 movies in 1 month for the price of 2, but unfortunately I did not get to see It Ends With Us, Speak No Evil, and Am I Racist? A travesty. For my first week, I learned that planning a month's worth of theater trips is kinda ass. You have to individually click a movie, pick a date, check each theater individually to see if they have any showtimes that work, and then check another date if they don't. You could try by going to the theater, but guess what? Same system. You have to pick a date, check the showtimes of the movies playing, then pick another date. Not only is there not an easy to read schedule that shows you a range of dates for specific movies run in all nearby theaters, most of the theaters don't have any showtimes beyond a week. I'm already having a blast. After checking every showtime of every movie playing in the tri-state area over the next 7 days, I've finally made my selections, locked in my reservations, and prepared myself for 3 doses of pure cinema.
Look, I don't even have anything to add to the discourse that hasn't been said already. It was ass. According to Tarantino, Todd Phillips saw this meme and took it personally, which thankfully stopped me from doing the same upon leaving the theater. I mean, I'm happy that I didn't pay full price for this ticket, but I also wouldn't have seen it to begin with if it wasn't for this challenge. So I think that's probably an L for me.
The theater experience was fine. AMC Rail has that pleasant corporate sanitation of a forgotten venue without any sort of vintage charm to it, which is pretty much exactly what I signed up for. The lack of laser projection didn't exactly help the overwhelming darkness of this movie, but it did help me appreciate Joaquin's scratchy vocals, which were like a Gotham version of contemporary Bob Dylan.
When our love was new and our hearts were high.
Go home, dear wife.
Stop visiting mine.
So while I wanted to start this challenge with a bona fide winner, we regroup and go again tomorrow. Now, the most common retort that an A-lister gets when trying to pitch this pyramid scheme to other schmucks is, well, are there even 2 movies a month that are worth seeing? And to that I say, I don't know, probably. You know, some of the best movies that I've ever seen are the ones that I've accidentally stumbled into, and this subscription ups your chances of exploring new territory. I mean, sure, you could do the same by launching a streaming service and picking a title at random, but the smaller amount of choice makes the selection process a whole lot easier. In fact, I'm already looking forward to the 2 movies I have remaining this week that are gonna make up for the car bomb that was Joker Folie à Deux. It can't get much worse.
Are these movies the only ones available to us?
Megalopolis was a movie that I was eagerly waiting for. I read half of a biography about Coppola's life and career. I helped crowdfund the project by purchasing hundreds of his wines in college, and I even drove 42 minutes to New York to see it on laser because my local theater's HD projection just wasn't gonna cut it. I saw the early controversial reviews, and I was fully prepared to take the contrarian viewpoint just out of sheer respect for one of America's greatest auteurs. But not even I can defend this fucking catastrophe. For every
So
go back to the club moment of pure meme bliss, there are 20 minutes of nonsensical proverbs, and that's before getting into the worst green screen work done over the last decade. Everything about this movie is clunky, which is shocking coming from a director who made 4 of the most airtight movies in 7 years. I didn't know it was gonna follow the recent trend of prolific directors making late career semi-autobiographies, but that realization halfway through did it no favors. The idea that a famed creator can stop time by falling for his assistant while trailblazing a new path for civilization just doesn't hit the same when you know the real-life parallels. But again, I only read half the biography. Maybe if I finished it, I would have understood the true significance behind Adam Driver's breakdancing freakout. Between this and Joker, though, I think I've unintentionally discovered a phenomenal double feature about society and the auteur, or some shit like that. Now, as for the AMC side of things, Portchester's pretty solid. It's big and it was surprisingly bustling, which is always a nice surprise in modern moviegoing. Without traffic, it's half an hour away from me, which is well worth it for the bump in quality. I also prefer the stadium seating to the recliners. Look, I'm just gonna come out and say it, okay? I hold real disdain for the AMC recliners. Perhaps it was because I was raised Catholic, like all good Northeastern American Italians, but I don't expect to be comfortable when I'm in the Cathedral of Kino. Stadium seating keeps me upright and attentive, which is vital in a movie like Megalopolis.
You find me cruel, selfish, and unfeeling? I am.
I'm looking forward to coming back to Portchester later in the month for some other anticipated releases. Even with that stamp of approval on this particular AMC, the letdown of the movie itself cannot be overlooked. Sure, I would have paid full boat to see the thing if I wasn't an A-lister, but I'm a masochist. The average person would have been extremely disappointed coughing up their $11 in their time, which I know because my wife did, and she did not understand nor enjoy any of the 138 minutes of this thing. While I'm happy I at least got to see it before it gets locked away in the distribution asylum, I can't exactly say that helps the A-list value argument. I'm counting this as 0 for 2, and I'm dangerously close to letting the now destroy the forever. Even though I hadn't seen a whiff of a trailer or review, which is arguably the best way to go into a movie, I still had high hopes for Transformers 1. That's probably unfair to the movie itself, but the weekly curation that A-list requires adds meaning to the group of movies you select to see. You start to feel connected to what's being released at this very moment and how they play off of each other in a way that streaming just simply can't replicate. You know, while that makes 2 stinkers in a row feel like a bottomless pit, I'm holding out hope that it means a stretch of good movies seen in theaters can rewrite the course of my month and possibly my life in a positive way. So, as I return to a completely vacant Royale 6 with hopes of a brighter future, I also carry the consideration that if Transformers 1 sucked and I had a few days to ruminate and a piss-poor initial trio, it would be difficult to garner the momentum needed to go for another 9 movie trips. And I'm thrilled to report that Transformers 1 is decent. It's a big IP sci-fi animation that does nothing new, and that's fine. It knows exactly what it is, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. The animation is excellent and done with palpable care. I know very little about Transformers lore, so I'm not going to try to comment about whether I think it's a faithful adaptation or not, but it was pretty fun to watch the origin stories of a bunch of characters that I've only known so far as caricatures.
We will kill them all.
What? We're gonna what?
The performances were solid, even if I am pretty fatigued of a bunch of celebrities trying to put in one day's work for 1 year's paycheck. Look, I know it's a bit of a tired topic now, but what happened to the career voice actors who would get to thrive in roles like this? Even though I had a good time, I can't decide if I think it was worth going to the theater for this or not. In a lot of ways, it feels like this movie was destined for streaming services from the very start, but Hasbro, still riding that $1 billion 2023 high, decided to try to take another risk before regretting it. But then again, would I have even watched this movie at home? I'm no Transformers head, so I can't imagine I put this on when there's so many other masterpieces in 2000 slop I haven't even touched yet. While there's a beauty to exploring something that you normally wouldn't, this is just another installment of a franchise that's literally older than me. Watching this wasn't so much of pounding an elixir like Coppola's wine as it was getting a cup of water in the desert. So with that in mind, I'm going to claim this first week as a sweep for AMC. 0-3 hurts on paper, but Transformers 1 at the very least gave me the faith to keep going and that my time is coming as long as I keep using more of it in their theaters. There's only one way to find out. How is it only week 2? You know, I probably should have made this video in the same month or same year that these movies came out, but also the Democrats probably should have fielded a competent candidate. Due to my busyness, I'm now forced to reflect on The Apprentice with today's knowledge. I imagine this is a risk that Ali Abbasi knew he was taking by making a movie about one of America's most prolific celebrities before knowing the outcome of the election, but it does change the overall reception nonetheless. If you don't know, The Apprentice is the second installment of biopics about presidents in their younger years, with 2016's Barry as the first entry and rounding out the trilogy. The performances are excellent and deserving of their praise, but the story doesn't do anything to move the needle of the societal discussion it's begging to be a part of. Sure, it's somewhat interesting to see how a young and malleable Donnie found his persona, but seeing it on screen doesn't do much more than reading it on Wikipedia. It feels like this movie hinged on 45 not becoming 47, so liberals could watch this as some sort of victory lap. That's not to say The Apprentice is outright bad. I'd even go so far to say that the movie is objectively well made. For one, I wish more biopics would lean into mixed formats, even if the VHS in this movie looks like they slapped the free Da Vinci effect on some HD footage. I just walked away from it wishing they took bigger risks. This is the same problem I had with A Complete Unknown. It feels like these movies are made for the actors and not the audience. As for the theater side of things, it was more bad times at the AMC Royale 6. I don't know why it's so hard for these theaters to have their projectors in focus. Like, I'm not going to be the Karen who goes to the staff and complains about it being a hair soft, but I will spend the entire runtime of the movie trying to figure out how it ends up that way. Like, did they nudge the lens or did they push the whole apparatus forward an inch so it was just out of focus to spite me? And could you please, for once, size your curtains or to match the picture correctly, right? Aren't they motorized now? Is that too much to ask? Oh, it is? Oh, my bad. With all of this in mind, I don't think I needed the theater trip for The Apprentice. I'm not mad it exists, but I would have been totally fine watching it at home. We're 0 for 4. One unexpected benefit of A-list are all the hidden little double features you find. Week 1 began with fake New York, but week 2 is all about the real deal, baby. Saturday Night is the second movie in a row about a guy on the verge of shaping 1970s Manhattan, except this one becomes an asshole after it ends. The only theater playing in near me was Portchester, which means I had to drive 40 minutes on a Tuesday night to see a movie that I didn't even know existed before I booked my ticket. And, if you'll believe it, the only thing more shocking than Milton Berle's third leg is the fact that I genuinely enjoyed this movie. That's right. After 4 consecutive Ks, we're finally reaching base. I don't know what it was, but a lot of Saturday night worked for me. Sure, you could look at it as the typical biopic formula, where today's up-and-comers portray young versions of yesterday's greats as they become stars, but the energy from start to finish is what sets it apart from your average retelling. I'm a sucker for movies that take place in real time, and this one uses the inching of the clock towards showtime to great effect. This might come off as a spoiler, but it's a successful show that doesn't end up getting canceled. Still, watching Sammy Fableman pinball between multiple fiascos and the overall chaotic energy of the studio provides enough unpredictability to keep you locked in from start to finish. The portrayals of SNL's inaugural class all have their unique charms, and they're well supported by Willem Dafoe and J.K. Simmons, providing some tenured ego.
Well, I just really shut the fuck up.
My favorite aspect was their choice to shoot on Kodak 200T because it created some beautifully warm and grounded cinematography that's complemented by the great John Baptiste score. I mean, you could tell that this movie is trying to be as raw and uncertain as the show that it's capturing, and it's one of the rare cases where they actually pull it off. I walked out of the theater pleased to finally have some decent fucking cinema. I think a large portion of that stems from the fact that I had zero expectation going into this, which I hope continues into the remaining 7 theater trips I have planned. I've pretty much already seen everything that's had a bunch of pre-release discussions, so in classic film Twitter fashion, the reception of this movie was ridiculously overblown. It's getting hard to have a predetermined opinion going into these screenings anyways. For the final movie before the halfway point of this challenge, I decided to spend some skill points and finally unlock a new A-list feature, the Entourage. Entourage lets you form a group of fellow A-listers where anyone in it can book seats for the bunch as long as they have reservations left. While it's a dirty marketing tactic to get you to sell this thing to your friends and family, it is honestly my favorite feature that A-list provides. It was a necessary upgrade too, because my wife had come with me for the societal lobotomy double feature and paid full price, so it would have been fiscally irresponsible for her to see another movie this month without joining the cult. Now you're in double trouble, AMC. Even though this is exactly what you dream of. The genesis of our cinephile caravan was just in time too, because Valentina was the one who wanted to see the wild robot. I had little interest in following 2 R-rated biographical stories with children's animation, but I was no longer at the wheel. Such is the way of the Entourage. I did take this opportunity, however, to inflict just a little bit extra damage onto the AMC balance sheet. Like I said earlier, A-list allows you to book movies in all types of formats for no additional upcharge, so I had to cross off as many as possible, even if I didn't particularly enjoy the experience. And let me tell you, this movie was a stark reminder that I hate watching movies in 3D. I hadn't been to one since Avatar: The Way of Water, except that was a regal ice-immersive experience, which may be the biggest scam ever invented. The side panels did not make me feel like I was underwater physically, only financially, since 2 tickets were $50 total, or the price of our entire entourage for this month. Get a grip, Regal.
3D is nothing more than an antiquated illusion with a dimmer view.
No part of the wild robot needed to be seen in 3D in order to be felt, so I kinda have to admit that I played myself in the pursuit of knocking a few pennies off the guys upstairs. But even beyond the awful format choice, neither Valentina nor I left this movie feeling particularly jazzed about it. This movie was built on a seemingly prevalent topic, but I felt fairly unmoved by this examination of tech versus nature. You know, maybe I'm too cynical, but the lack of humans in the story makes it feel like the creators are trying to absolve the people who made the robots of sin, rather than reminding us that these machines wouldn't start forest fires if we didn't program them to in the first place. The star-studded cast delivers heartwarming performances, but I feel like I gotta say it again. Look, I know it's a bit of a tired topic now, but what happened to the career voice actors who would get to thrive in roles like this? Now look, obviously I'm not the target audience here, so I may be coming at this with just a little bit too much heat, but I just feel like every review I've seen has lauded this as some kind of revolutionary step in DreamWorks filmography, and to me it just feels like another lukewarm entry. I'm pretty sure there's a movie that perfected this topic over 15 years ago, but hey, maybe I'm biased. As for the theater, this was the first time during this challenge I went to Sonoe, and it easily catapulted itself to my least favorite option. This is the only AMC that I have to pay to park in my area, so those same executives that I try to impoverish get to now laugh at me for my insolence. All in all, Valentina's first trip as an A-lister was a lot like mine. Mediocre. 1 for 6. And with that, we are officially 50% of the way through. I may be rapidly clawing back my previously wasted money, but the jury is still out if I'm winning the battle on time, which is arguably more important, since that's what we live in. I began week 3 with the voice of my youth soccer coach, Mr. Martin, reverberating in my brain. If they could score 5 on us in the first half, then we could do it to them in a second. You know, now usually those games would end 10-0, but for the first 3 minutes after the whistle, there was at least a chance. That's the type of copium I'm on right now. Remember, the goal here is just to pay homage to Shock, alright? 3 hits and we're in Canton. That just means I need less than half of the remaining movies to be decent enough where I don't feel like I wasted a month of my life. That has to be possible. I entered the Royale 6 on a glorious Sunday evening, knowing that We Live in Time is a romantic drama starring Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield, and nothing else. The only other attendees were a group of high school students who were gleefully poking fun at every trailer that they saw. One of them said at the conclusion of the Mufasa preview, "Why do we keep letting Lin-Manuel Miranda work?" And I was transported back to my own adolescence, when moviegoing was the highlight of my week, and not a way to get back at the man. I envy their joy. I crave their ignorance. We Live in Time was fine. It's a family drama spanning decades that chronicles life, loss, and how to correctly crack an egg.
Always on a flat surface, yeah?
It's getting pretty repetitive to share that the performances were excellent but limited by the script, but that seems to be the most common theme of these October movies. If I could describe it one way, this was a tried and true airplane movie. It was filled with enough turmoil to make you appreciate your health and your partner for half of your flight, but there weren't enough unique moments to make any sort of imprint upon landing. I mean, even the moments of triumph are outweighed by how run-of-the-mill they are, and it's all tied together by a rather flat ending that makes the whole thing unmemorable. The egg cracking thing was like actually the most important piece of information that I gleaned from this, but that's not enough for me to consider this a worthwhile watch. I would have been more than fine seeing this on my next cross-country trip. I can hear the sighs of Coach Marty now as we concede immediately after half. He sounds an awful lot like Scolari.
They might have number 7 here now. They have got 7.
You know, as much as I like to shit on AMC, they do offer a few things that help refresh the theater-going experience as a whole, one of which is Screen Unseen, their series where you can watch an unreleased movie prior to its full theatrical run. Now, the fun part is, you have no idea what the movie is when you're booking, leaving your future and your time in the hands of some exhausted curator trapped in the cubicles of AMC's headquarters. This was the first time that I went to this series through AMC, but I've had similar experiences. The most notable of which was when I went to go see 4 back-to-back Denzel movies at the New Beverly in Hollywood with my friend Ryan. We went through that theater at 6 p.m. with nothing more than predictions of what it would be shown, and we left at 4 a.m. buzzing, having just watched 4 deep cuts with an electric crowd. I mean, no exaggeration, it's genuinely thrilling to relinquish control of what you're watching and just adapt to what's being put in front of you, and it's something that I wish more theaters would incorporate into their arsenal. Screen Unseen is at least an attempt towards something like that, so I will throw a little bit of respect on AMC's name for the option. Because it was October, the theme for the month was Scream Unseen. Haha, festive. I inferred that it would be a horror of some kind, or at the very least a spooky premise. I was not correct. The movie screened was Your Monster, an indie feature written and directed by Caroline Lindy. It's about a young actress going through a breakup while simultaneously receiving an earth-shattering diagnosis, which means week 3's double feature is 2 very different interpretations of dealing with life with cancer. I cannot believe this double feature bit is still going. This movie sort of dabbles in 6 or 7 genres, from rom-com to creature feature to musical, crescendoing with a stage performance loosely reminiscent of Black Swan. It's a bit all over the place, but if you're someone who frequents your local film festival because you like the indie feel, you might enjoy this. There's not too much that I can really say about this thing. I didn't particularly enjoy watching it, but it's just simply not fair to compare it to the other multi-million-dollar features that are on this list. It was made for $300,000, premiered at Sundance, and secured distribution, which is all more than I have ever done. So, as a Glass House resident, I appreciate the roof above my head. I also don't have homeowner's insurance. The tough part about deciding if this trip is worth it is separating Your Monster from Screen Unseen. Even though this one didn't hit, I still adore the idea of gambling away 2 hours because the potential jackpot is accidentally finding one of your favorite movies, and the blind luck involved would only compound the experience. Plus, if you're trying to use A-list to even half of its potential, this is an easy way to spice up your rotation without having to enter choice paralysis. On the other hand, I truly despise having to pay Sono 8 for parking. It's a toss-up. At times like these, I must return to our guiding light, Mr. Shock. Since tie goes to the runner is a fake rule in baseball, I'm not going to award .5s or a free hit. Instead, I'm willing to score this as an error. The at-bat doesn't count, but we still managed to reach base. It mathematically doesn't change the equation at all, but it does help me sleep at night. The final entry of week 3 is another special event, except this time, I know exactly what I'm getting. Another offering I'm quite fond of is the redistribution of movies from long ago, because apparently 2015 is ancient history at this point. A24 occasionally re-releases his movies for one night only, which meant I had to build my whole week around seeing this thing in Port Chester on a Wednesday night. I don't mind this, since it once again takes the thought out of the equation, but it did make the somewhat empty theater a little bit less surprising. I had seen The Witch before, just never on IMAX, which is how A24 typically does these re-releases. Regardless if my opinion evolved from my first viewing or not, I was ecstatic to finally be getting an IMAX screening in. Most of the month, Joker Folie à Deux had been holding the screen hostage, so I was worried I was going to go this whole challenge without touching AMC's most premium offer. Plus, one ticket cost $21, so 90% of my month's fee was taken care of from a single screening. If you're someone who cares about seeing everything that's released at IMAX, you basically get one extra free movie a month for being an A-lister. That's that juicy boy math for you. It had been just over 5 years since I originally watched The Witch in my Los Angeles apartment living room, but this time around was way more fun. I now feel bad for anyone who didn't head into and out of this movie with New England autumn trees lining the way, since it now feels like the only way to watch it. Even though my overall opinion of how much I liked this movie remained about the same, this experience was undoubtedly so much better. I really enjoyed the sound design and cinematography in ways I hadn't before, which is a reminder that you really haven't engaged with most of your favorites until you've seen them with the right equipment. While I originally doubted the choice to screen this on a Wednesday night, it did put me in a particularly festive mood for the rest of the week and the month. Maybe this distributor knows what they're doing. Once again, Port Chester takes the cake. I'm a sucker for reliability and for free parking. Sono 8 could only dream of performances like this. The Witch and IMAX was undoubtedly worth it. Do we have a late comeback on our hands? 2 for 8. We have finally arrived at the end game. It's been a whirlwind of a month, but I enter this final week still with the hope that I can validate my continued patronage of AMC. This final week is full of movies that were only alerted to me by doing this challenge, so I only need one of the 3 of these to hit. It cannot be that difficult. If you're on film Twitter, you might have seen this screenshot circulating for a few months. It's like this image was made in an engagement bait factory. Countless tweets reference this terrifying scene with a "if you know" attitude, prompting hundreds of replies solely consisting of "movie? What movie?" After sorting through the crypto scams and bots, I finally learned that this still was from Longlegs, a horror thriller from burgeoning director Osgood Perkins. Since I had missed the window of initial release, I was worried that I'd be relegated to just this image for the rest of time, wondering on my deathbed whose head was attached to this supple torso. But I instead was saved by the re-release gods, offering me one last chance to see the horror of the year in theaters. And as if that wasn't enough, they were also attaching a pre-recorded Q&A of Perkins and a preview of his next movie, The Monkey, all for the price of one ticket. What have I done to deserve such generosity? Are these my Joker reparations? For the final time this month, we crossed state lines for a Saturday night in Portchester. The stage was set to wrap up this W with 2 movies to spare. All I needed was, in classic film Twitter fashion, the reception of this movie was ridiculously overblown. Look, there's plenty that's good about it. Nicolas Cage is Nicolas Cage. The sound design was particularly notable. And I really like the cinematography, but it misses the mark in the one place that actually matters: the story. None of the Christian commentary feels fresh, and the detective elements even less so. I would have been more intrigued if they made up for the razor-thin plot by dialing up all of the horror elements, but the scariest image is literally in the trailer. And this is coming from a subscriber of the Robert Pattinson School of Being Scared. I often abstain from supernatural movies of this nature. I put on my big boy pants for nothing. Longlegs unfortunately fell into the same marketing and reception trap that kills countless movies for me. I mean, look, maybe that's a me issue. I will concede that. But when you actively position yourself as the horror of the year and people spend months raving about your movie, I expect to have to waddle out of the theater. This just again reaffirms that watching a movie with zero expectations remains undefeated now and for forever. And before you sound off on me for this lukewarm take, just know that my wife already did that while leaving the theater. Valentina was simultaneously such a fan and so uncomfortable from this viewing that we didn't even get to see the Q&A or the Monkey preview because she wanted to go home. You know, maybe those add-ons would have salvaged the experience, but I guess we'll never know. Such is the way of the entourage. 2 for 9. The Substance was another movie that we waited entirely too long to see. I had seen a lot of hype for it as well, so after leaving Longlegs, I was incredibly wary of being disappointed 2 days in a row, and this was only compounded by the circumstances of the viewing. Since we had taken so long to watch it, the only theater still playing it was in Plainville, and if you're unfamiliar with Connecticut geography, it's important to note that Plainville is not in my area. It was also only screening at 10:10 a.m., meaning we had to leave by 8:50 in order to make it on time.
It is 8:49 a.m. on Sunday, October 27th. This is the earliest I've ever gone to a movie. I got home from Longlegs last night at like 10:20. I went to sleep, and I'm already up and going. I mean, already up. It's almost 9 o'clock. It's not like this is early, but this is the earliest I've ever gone to a movie.
My entire weekend was in the hands of Demi Moore. The last time I'd been to AMC Plainville was for Black Panther, and the transmission of my mom's old car decided that gears 1 and 3 through 8 would be heading to the ancestral plane when we tried to leave. That's more GMC's fault than AMC, but I couldn't help but pull into the parking lot with fear in my heart. It was going to take an S-tier experience to undo all that trauma from 6.5 years ago. The lobby's big and gaudy, which is exactly what I want from this global enterprise. You gotta show me you got all the money and no taste, baby. We were seeing The Substance on laser since IMAX had been released from Joker. It was now being held hostage in the House of Mouse, but it's nice knowing the option is there. Walking into the theater, I really thought that Plainville was gonna give Portchester a run for its money, but the second I sat down, I knew the battle was over.
American Multi-Cinema. Let's talk. Why is there no quality control on your projector focus? Why do you put me in such a tough spot? It's either I exit my seat and I tell the underpaid concierge to tell the underpaid projectionist to go fix the focus, or I have to sit through a 2.5-hour movie wondering how these beautiful shallow depths of field shots would look if they were crisp. You have no problem thanking your meme investors before every showing. Why not show a little gratitude to the people who work the front line? Then maybe they would take a little pride in their work and make sure that the bare minimum of the theater-going experience is met. Just a thought.
Back to The Substance. What a picture. I can only imagine how this thing would have looked in focus. Even before it was somewhat snubbed, this was my film of the year behind Challengers and my pick for most of the Oscars. Not that those actually matter anyways though, especially when the Academy admits that it actively loathes its own industry. I'm sure that this movie hit just a little bit too close to home. In fact, that's the only gripe I really have with the story. I'm really over meta movies about Hollywood celebrities. I actually think it would have been way more effective to paint this as the plight of a small town fitness instructor rather than than a seasoned star, since it would have compounded the commentary on body image by making the stakes even more self-imposed. You know, you don't even have to change the narrative all that much to achieve this, but the end product becomes something much more relatable to the average person. But I mean, what the fuck do I know? I'm a 28-year-old man. I'm not the target demo here. Beyond that, I love the concept, which is cleverly explained in about 45 seconds, the direction, the performances, the cinematography, and the editing. I'd warn you that it's best to avoid AMC stale popcorn that's been sitting under a heat lamp for hours while watching this, since that's only going to become more repulsive with every bite of food Dennis Quaid takes. I haven't seen anything else by Coralie Farge, but this alone makes me excited to follow her journey from here on out. Without a doubt, this was the best movie of the month.
But was that enough to be considered worth it?
After all, we did drive 3 hours round trip to sit through a 2.5-hour soft screen. I mean, sure, the experience was better than my Black Panther escapade, but it's hard to quantify by how much. Then again, moviegoing's not about crunching numbers, no matter how much I try to do this in this video. It's about leaving the comfort of your normal life to step into someone else's for a few hours. And The Substance is a rare movie that transports you to its world, and one that deserves to be seen on the biggest screen and the best speakers possible. So even with AMC actively sabotaging my viewing experience, I think this one was worth it. 3 for 10. We did it, Joe. The $25 a month I've been punting for the last half a year was not in vain. Before starting this challenge, I genuinely had zero hope of this outcome, but I'm quite happy to report that I've been proven wrong. We got one chance left to run the score, but regardless of that at-bat, we'll be enshrined next to Roy Schalk. Somebody get my plaque going at the AMC headquarters. Michael Jordan on the Wizards, Aaron Rodgers on the Jets, Fernando Alonso returning to F1 after retiring as a 41-year-old, me seeing Robert Zemeckis' Here. All-time greats simply don't know when to hang it up. Here was a movie that I only learned about by going to all these other movies since the trailer kept playing throughout the month. I'd love when movies are driven by a single storytelling device, so I had pretty solid hopes that Zemeckis would be able to pull off a movie built on a camera being in one spot for the entirety of time. But if I've learned anything from this challenge, it's that I should listen to Dante when I'm entering the theater. Great concept, lackluster execution. I especially could have done without the Ben Franklin plotline, which probably sounded a lot more clever on a whiteboard in a writer's room than it actually plays on screen. The de-aging of Tom Hanks is somewhere between Tron Legacy and The Irishman, so, you know, do with that what you will. All in all, this would probably make an excellently mid-double feature alongside We Live in Time. That reminds me, we did end the month with one last double feature for the road, only this one has nothing to do with the movies itself. We decided that the drive to The Substance wasn't enough, so we hopped back into the car on this Halloween night to go see Here at AMC Southington, which is an hour away from our apartment. This was for a good reason though. My mom was mad that I had gone to 11 movies without inviting her once, so I figured I would bring her to the last possible option before time ran out. Like a good son, she provided a glowing review of the movie.
I don't know. I have no thoughts.
Did you like it?
I don't know.
1 to 10, first number that comes to mind.
4.
Wow, that's a low rating.
Proof that this double feature of 5 hours of cumulative driving was worth it. AMC Southington was my original childhood theater, back when it was still Showcase Cinemas. I remember going to see some 2000s hits like Iron Man and National Treasure before going to play in the arcade for what seemed like hours. The theater was lively then, a time where you had to go get tickets early in the morning to make sure that you would have a seat later in the afternoon. It's hard to even imagine that now. This theater was probably the saddest of the month to visit because of all the fond memories. There were like 5 people on Halloween in this 12-screen building, and one of them was dressed up as an homage to our capitalist overlords. The arcade has been dismantled to a couple machines, all seemingly clean enough to eat off. I mean, I felt compelled to go over there and sneeze on one of them just so it could feel alive again. On top of that, my cursed expectation of higher standards when it comes to the theater equipment itself only made the entire experience worse. They managed to get the focus on the projector right for once, so thanks for that one, but the left audio channel decided to go out during the Wicked trailer and only made an appearance for 15 seconds at a time every 30 minutes. The feelings of joy and care have just palpably evaporated from this building, so, you know, while it was nice to hang out with my mom for a night, I can't say that AMC was even a fraction of the reason why. With all the credits rolled and no reservations remaining, I could finally reflect on a hectic month of moviegoing. While I hit my goal of 3 movies being a good watch and a good experience, I'm still left wondering if this is actually worth the $25 a month. If you're just like a straight up letterbox completionist and it's only the volume of movies watched that matters to you, then the time spent going to and from the theater plus previews may not be all that enticing. I spent 14.6 hours during this month outside of my home sitting through things that weren't the movie itself. And even if I take out the last
last 2 long haul drive, I still quote unquote lost 9.8 hours of time. There's 6 tight 90s I could have watched at home. I really think the biggest thing that this pass gets wrong is only letting you do 1 a day. Like, I would be way more inclined to trade in 3 or 4 movies a month if I could do a double feature on the weekends. Crazy concept. I would maybe even be willing to buy concessions if I'm going to spend 6 to 8 hours in a theater. If I'm seeing The Brutalist twice, I guess that's a long day in the theater. But the point stands. I guess, that probably loses them like a net 15 cents or whatever, so I'm sure we won't be seeing that anytime soon. I also spent a ton of this month in empty, subpar theaters. Like, I joked about it a lot, but the technical issues do kind of kill the whole experience at times, and the lack of energy really does kill the excitement of seeing something new. You can feel that AMC knows they're an endangered species, and they're just trying to squeeze out the last bit of money before the whole party ends. The standard should be so much higher. On the other hand, I did see a bunch of movies that I probably wouldn't have watched otherwise, and they all left an impression on me one way or another because of the extra effort I had to put into the adventure. While planning your schedule of movies in the AMC app blows and it's horrendous, the trios of movies are kind of engraved in my brain now, even if there's no unifying factors across them. And from a financial standpoint, I did reverse my fortune and I exited the month overwhelmingly in the green. The 12 movies would have cost $161.30 stock, but I got them for a measly $24.95. This 1 month alone surpassed how much I've paid into A-list since May. Now that's a trade deal. Most importantly, I got out of my house 12 extra times a month for a rather fair fixed price. Seeing the trees transition from summer to fall while heading towards some horrific cinema was a genuine highlight of my year, and one I wouldn't have appreciated as much had I just turned on my streaming services. I mean, there's been a lot of talk in recent years about the death of the third place and Community because they've been replaced by low cost and low effort digital options that are ready immediately, but this subscription allows you to push back against that with some regularity, even if you don't use it to its fullest extent. Like, there's a possible world where you and your friends stop paying for 2 more streaming services a month that you barely use anyways, and you turn this pass into some fun little movie club where everyone gets to pick a film and hang out. But who knows, maybe you find your favorite filmmaker along the way. I mean, for that, I think that alone, that's probably worth it. But the biggest, most crucial takeaway from all of this is that none of the credit should be assigned to AMC. Look, A-list is worth it because it's all we have, not because they're particularly good at what they do. If a local independent theater could offer the subscription, then it'd be worth every cent and more, especially if it included re-releases of films from years prior.
But since this is the best we got, I will be henceforth continuing my patronage as a 2 to 3 times a month A-lister, even with the upcoming price increase. Please do not make me redo this challenge now that they're offering 4 movies a week. Please. I beg you.